The Turtles are successfully saved. Welcome back to Forward Progress, live here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network and powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I'm producer Jason. After my week off there in the Galapagos Island, I'm back. You could catch me here every Friday on the Forward Progress YouTube channel alongside just Matthew Freedman and Jack Miller this week. No John Laghezza, but we want to give a quick shout out to him for going 0 carbs throughout the entire month of January. That shit is not easy. Good for him, and we wish him well. You'll see him. You're going to see him still on this channel. You'll see him here next Wednesday when we have our big prop extravaganza show. If you don't know what that is, subscribe to this channel and you will not miss out when we go live. It's 5 hours straight of Super Bowl props. So I know you guys are here for Super Bowl props, but if you want to check out our show next Wednesday too, make sure you're subscribed here. And then as always, hit that like button. Just gives us a little boost in the algorithm. I mean, a lot of fun, a lot of stuff to talk about here. Before we get into our Super Bowl prop show, I want to remind everyone that this show is sponsored by Pinnacle. Give a quick shout out to them. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sportsbook, offering competitive odds for 25 years. We preach line shopping on this channel, and with everyday competitive odds, Pinnacle should be one of your available outs. If you're looking to support the show, make sure you use code HAMMER when signing up to Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for 25 years. Bet smart, bet Pinnacle. Must be 19 plus in Ontario. Please play responsibly and not available in the U.S. We're finally here. Last show of the season, last game of the season. It's bittersweet. I love the Super Bowl, but it's always like a little bit sad because, you know, we get to go 32 weeks without football. But how do you guys, just to start off the show here, how do you guys kind of attack betting a game that's like the only game on the board? There's tons of prop menus out there across multiple different books with so many different props. Matt, we'll start with you. I'm just curious to get your big picture thoughts when betting on a game like the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so, like one of the truisms is that, like if you like an over, you generally want to bet it early. If you like an under, you probably want to wait as long as you reasonably can till kickoff. The one thing I would say, like as a sort of exception to that, is if there's an under that is like, I wouldn't say mispriced, but like obviously wrong, probably just bet that early just while you still can, because there are sharp bettors who are just crawling through the markets, and if they see something that is just clearly wrong, even if it's an under, they're just going to bet it. So but I would say in general, if you like overs, probably bet them early. Unders, you probably want to bet late. And then I'd say game props. And actually, just one quick thing, kind of big picture thing. I like unders in general for the Super Bowls. I mean, I tend to like unders in general for games, but especially for the Super Bowl, when you do have more public money coming in and the lines do get a little more inflated, I still think that there's a pretty significant edge on betting, for things not to happen. I'm betting like for a lack of excitement. And I think that also applies to the game props. So betting on nothing to happen, like betting on no safety, no overtime, whatever it is, like betting on inaction tends to be profitable. Just because people tend to want to bet on like the yes side of a proposition. And then like correlated with that, often if you're betting on something not to happen, there might be heavy juice attached to it. And people generally don't want to bet things with big juice. But if something has, minus 900 odds, but that thing has like a 95 to 98% chance of not happening, then there's still value there, even if you're laying minus 900 juice. So I think, that is an area where there can still be some value. And then I would just say, especially for the Super Bowl, like you want to have as many accounts as possible at different sports books, so that in a worst case scenario, you're just line shopping and you win a little bit more money, or you don't lose as much money. But in a best case scenario, you have the ability to have some middles and some arbitrage opportunities. So I think, obviously you want sports books at different accounts all the time, but especially for the Super Bowl, because there are so many different props out there. Like this is the 2-week period where you can really attack on props, and books can't really do or won't do too much about it because they're trying to cover so much ground, and there's so much other money that is also coming in on props that they can tolerate a little bit more, like the action from sharper bettors. So you want as many accounts at books as possible.
And just to add on to there, always try and look for two-way markets as well if you can. Like if it's an anytime TD score, that's honestly why we love Pinnacle here over on this network. You can bet the no if you want on any TD score that is available over on Pinnacle. There are some other books that offer that as well. So if you're on Ontario, you don't have Pinnacle, you might want to sign up for that just for the option of hitting like the no on Christian McCaffrey. I don't know, maybe, who knows? We'll see. But
who would do that?
might be me. We'll see. Jack, any other thoughts here? Just big picture thoughts on your kind of process for betting the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think that the idea of betting unders closer to the game, I think it's still like slightly true, but I do think that was a lot more true like 5 or 10 years ago.
Yes.
I definitely agree with Freedman's idea of like just looking through everything, getting accounts. I was just going to bring up like digging really deep. Like this is really the one game a year where you can bet on truly ridiculous stuff. And the more ridiculous the market, the harder it is for the books to price. So I think that there's probably the biggest edge on the stuff that they haven't been offering all year. It's just that you have to kind of look around for it a bit more. That's where having the accounts comes in. And then I think that, with it being such a big betting event, and I guess like now there's probably like pressure to bet and to have action on the game. I would say that since limits are higher for the Super Bowl on most things, like if you're looking at, a line on Sunday morning, I think that it makes sense to approach it with some skepticism just because that number has been out there for a week. And so I guess just lending some respect to the market for a one game slate on the biggest game of the year makes some sense, especially as we get right up to kickoff.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Jack. I see your questions in the chat as well, guys. We'll get to those in just a second here. Love that little piece of information there from Jack and Matthew. Always have available outs, and just dig deep, guys. I know what I'm going to be doing this weekend. It's going to be on my couch scrolling through odd screens just to kind of see what I can get, what's not usually offered, and just kind of make it like come up with try and like beat markets that aren't usually offered, like you said there, Jack. Let's kind of go ahead, Matt.
Jumping in just to second something that Jack said. I don't remember exactly what it was that he said, but like kind of like looking at different bets and kind of diving in deep. One thing that I would say is like when you're doing that, you'll notice that there are a lot of correlated markets where they're basically asking for the same thing, but sometimes they have different prices. And so I would say like think of like, for instance, there could be a prop that has Pacheco versus McCaffrey in rushing yards, and then there would be a market that has most rushing yards in the game. And those are like super correlated markets, but they are slightly different, and the books might price them differently. And so I would say like whatever it is that you're trying to solve, like be sure that you're checking all of the different markets that are correlated to make sure that you're kind of getting the best price on something like that. And then also like thinking about it in that way, if a market moves on one thing, it still might not move in the other thing. Cause like the odds makers are covering so much ground. And so even if something like moves in one area, something that could be really correlated to it maybe hasn't caught up yet. And so like, I would say one thing is just like, do like an overview of as much of the market as possible and kind of even get a sense that, because like different books like phrase things differently, they organize everything differently so that you can like have a sense in your head of like, okay, if I have this idea at DraftKings, I'm looking over here at FanDuel, Pinnacle, wherever, just like get a sense of how it is all organized, because like that can actually help save you time later.
Yeah, those are great points here. And also just a quick little thing, make sure you're kind of reading what the bet is offering correctly, because I know this is just something small that happened earlier in the year to us on this channel. It was betting an anytime touchdown score, a guy scored on a return. Some books paid it out for that player, but some books paid it out as defense and special teams. So just double check the house rules and just make sure you're reading that what you're betting on is actually what you think you're betting on, and not some other stipulations there that might kind of make your winner turn into a loser there. So just keep an eye on that. Those are all great points here. We're going to kind of dive our way into matchup discussions. Just quickly, there's a couple questions in the chat. I think it has one of them here from Justin has a little bit with what we're talking about here. He's saying he wants to bet some Aiyuk unders, but he's saying it's only dropped since open, right? So I mean, you want to usually bet unders closer to the closing to when the game starts here, but for Aiyuk, it seems like sharp bettors have targeted him and said, you know what, his line is a little bit too high, let's keep betting him under, and it keeps going down. Jack, any thoughts on like how you would kind of attack Aiyuk. Justin, if you can, I'm going to pull up the odds for Aiyuk in just a second here, but any thoughts on that, Jack?
Yeah, I think that I don't have our exact Aiyuk projection up at the moment, but I do think that kind of relates to the idea that like 20 years ago, maybe every number just got steamed up by the public, but nowadays, like if there's a number that's off, it's not a lock to go up, even if it's on a star player like Aiyuk. And that maybe with that example, it kind of pertains to being aware of the public narrative. Like the public narrative is that, you know, the Chiefs shut down outside wide receivers. So that relates to Debo and Aiyuk, obviously. And so that's maybe an example where instead of betting a player up, the public might think like, oh, you know, L'Jarius Sneed and the Chiefs secondary, like they're going to shut down Debo and Aiyuk. I'm going to take the under. But in general, I would just assume that numbers are going to move toward efficiency more than anything.
Yeah. So I guess the best thing there is just if you like it, just take it kind of. And just looking, not sure what you were looking for there, Justin, but Aiyuk's numbers right now, 63.5, seems to be that everywhere for receiving yards, around minus 115, 120. There's some 62.5s as well. And then his receptions, is around 4.5, minus 119 towards the under here. Matt, any thoughts on those numbers, or you kind of just in agreement with Jack there where it should just progress to efficiency?
So I would be curious to know why it is that Justin likes the unders, and maybe it is that general idea that Jack was mentioning of, you know, like the public perception of this is a really good Chiefs defense, especially in the secondary. They're vulnerable in the running game. Maybe that means McCaffrey runs a lot, and we just don't see much aerial action for the 49ers offense. So like if that is the general thesis for going against Aiyuk, I can understand it. I kind of want to see the numbers like of what he would maybe think is a reasonable bet. I actually have projections to the over on Aiyuk, not like massively to the over. So I think you said 63.5 around there's the number. Yeah. I have
receptions. Yeah.
I have it at 68.3. So, you know, like 5 yards to the over. That's not massive, but I would say actually if there is some public sentiment that is driving that number lower, if it continues to drive that number lower, I might actually end up betting the over there. But that's the way that I would approach it. And also I would just say generally, I do feel that this is kind of a little bit more of a Debo game than an Aiyuk game, even though like I have the projection to the over here. Like the wide receivers who have given the Chiefs a little more trouble are the guys who kind of have some of that inside outside versatility. And that is much more Debo Samuel than Brandon Aiyuk. So I don't know if I had to be pessimistic on one of the wide receivers for the 49ers, it probably would be Aiyuk, but at the current market, I don't think I would be taking any unders.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Appreciate that, guys. Justin, if you want to drop in the chat the numbers you're looking at, or the number that you'd want to kind of bet on Aiyuk, feel free to do so here. And just before we get into these matchups, I want to give everyone a quick reminder. If you're looking to win some very cool and very elite Pinnacle merch here, that's very rare. Head over to the pinned comment there, thehammer.bet/the nails. And if you click that link, sign up through that page. There's the first thing you'll see is like a little button that says enter giveaway. You enter the giveaway, you have a chance at winning some free Pinnacle merch here. Good little Pinnacle grab bag, sweater, golf shirt, hat, water bottle, tons of cool stuff there. So if you're looking for some Pinnacle swag, make sure you head over to the link in the pinned comment over there. Justin just chimed in here with his reasoning. He said, my reasoning is that Snead is known to shut down wide receiver once, has given up 0 touchdowns in 462 coverage snaps, and has only allowed 5+ catches, 50+ yards in games twice this season. He said he wished he got on it at the open at 65.5. Also, last thing here, Aiyuk is known to be a man coverage beater, but I'm pinning the game script to be run heavy for the 49ers. So pretty much similar to what we kind of talked about here on the show, which is pretty interesting to see. Any thoughts, guys, or you want to switch over to the discussion here?
I think that's fair. It makes sense. I mean, the one thing with Snead is that he does travel, like he doesn't just stay on one side of the field. And like if I had to like try to pick a guy that he's probably going to be on, I think he probably matches up more with Aiyuk than with Samuel, but like you never know for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, you got all the information there, Justin. So do with that what you will. Let's talk about a little bit of the matchup discussion here. Anything you guys are looking at specifically in this game that you feel you might have an edge on from like a matchup perspective, whether it be whether it be, I guess, San Fran's ability to run the ball versus KC, who seems to be not very good at stopping the run here. Anything you guys are looking at there, Matt? Let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think from the perspective of the 49ers having the ball, it feels like their key matchup, their key players, I mean, Christian McCaffrey against the Chiefs run defense. Like, I normally think that running on early downs is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Like most teams do it too often, but the 49ers, so let me rephrase this. Every team that has done it this year running on early downs has a negative EPA, except for the 49ers. They're literally the one to, and like, if you look at a chart, it's like every team over here and then the 49ers on their own, just on the other side of positive. And so like they've been elite on first and second downs in general, but like especially with their early down rushing efficiency, that's been exceptional for them. And I guess that's what happens when you have McCaffrey and you've got a really good play caller. Trent Williams and George Kittle are, run game monsters. So I think they are the one team where it actually does make sense for them to lean into the running game. And I don't see why they would do anything different than what they have done all year, given the matchup advantage that they have. So like we all know, like the Chiefs defense, number 28 in defensive rush EPA, missing Derek Nottie, missing Charles Omenehu. So like their defensive line will be thinner than it normally is. And they're already not good at run defense. So you put all that together, and I think it means like we're going to see a lot of Christian McCaffrey, but like the run game is a low ceiling type of endeavor. Like if you are successful in the run game, you are controlling the clock, grinding down the time of that the other team has to possess the ball, but you're also not putting up as many points as you probably could. So you're basically trading points for time. That's if you're successful. If you're unsuccessful, you're just capping your offense and you might be putting your defense in really negative field position. So like if the 49ers are going to win, they're going to need to have success running the ball because they are likely to be running the ball a lot. So like I would just say, like from the perspective of thinking about how this game goes, the 49ers, I think we know they want to run the ball. I imagine that they have some success doing that, but even if they have success running the ball, they're choosing to run the ball instead of throw the ball. And like that on its own is kind of a low upside endeavor. But that's the way I'm looking at the matchup of when the 49ers have the ball. Here's how things are going to need to go well for them to win.
Yeah, I love those points there because that's kind of part of like what got me. Like when I think about this game, when I think about this matchup, what I think about the teams, what each team wants to do here, it's almost like a gambit for the Niners, right? Do you want to run the ball and like potentially limit your upside here on offense? But that's your strength, right? So it's like, how is this game going to play out script wise? Always interesting to think that through here. Jack, I want to ask you a couple of questions, or want to ask you about overperformers and underperformers. You're a big longest reception guy. We've seen it on the show throughout the entire year, right? So is there anything that you're seeing, whether it be in the longest reception market or in other markets, where you feel like a certain player might be undervalued or overvalued given their line that's being presented, whether or not you would bet on it for sure? Like just anything you've noticed while combing through these multiple different sports books?
Not really at the moment. I have one bet for later that I don't know if I'm supposed to bring that up now or later. I do think
we'll bring it up later.
Okay, then I'll wait on that. Just something, I guess, being overly reactionary without a role change is something that I would bring up. I think for like the primary guys, all the lines are pretty fair. I like Justin Watson's under 1.5 catches where it opened at, but it looks like it kind of got hit a little bit. So in the current market, I'm not seeing a whole lot there in terms of under versus overperformers, except for a bet that I'll bring up in a few minutes here.
In just a second here. Yeah. And we'll get to that bet in just a quick second here shortly. But before we do, I want to ask you guys like quick little MVP discussion here, because I thought it's I have like a little interesting little bet here for the MVP. I'm just more so thinking about Kelsey MVP because I've seen this kind of talks on Twitter right now. Best price I found in market pre-show was around 17-1. And for those who don't know how the MVP voters work, 80% of it is made up by 16 writers. So 16 writers vote on the MVP, but the other 20% is voted by fans. So the Swifties are going to potentially come out here for Kelsey if he has a game. And I just took a look at the last 5 Super Bowls. Who's won MVP? There's been 2 MVP winners who have not been quarterbacks. They've both been wide receivers. One of them obviously being the Rams vs. Bengals Super Bowl 56. Cooper Kupp had 8 receptions, 92 yards, 2 TDs. Stafford that game had 26 completions, 283 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And then in Super Bowl 53 with the Patriots, Julian Edelman had 10 receptions, 140 receiving yards, and Brady had 21 completions, 262 passing yards, 0 TDs, 1 interception. So you can kind of see what the floor is for receivers, I guess. Kelsey's a tight end, but basically a receiver, what he could do to potentially win the award. Would you be willing to, like, Matt, would you be willing to take like a flyer on Kelsey at all at this price at 17-1, just with the 20% voters impact? Don't know if that's being priced in. Just wanted to think that out with you guys out loud here.
All right. So I generally think that a quarterback has to be pretty subpar in a performance for him not to win MVP in the Super Bowl if his team wins. And so think about that game that you mentioned 5 years ago, Patriots Rams.
Yep.
Was that like 13-3? It was something like very low scoring game. Brady didn't have a touchdown. He didn't have many passing yards. Like I think almost half, maybe even more of his passing yards went to Edelman. And so like it was a very clean kind of like pivot towards like, all right, well, Brady doesn't really deserve it, but like Edelman had an awesome game. And a similar thing with Cooper Kupp with how dominant he was in that offense. So like the path is we have a low scoring game. Mahomes doesn't throw 3 touchdowns. Maybe he doesn't even throw 2 touchdowns. Kelsey has over 100 yards and he has a receiving touchdown. And I would say in that scenario, I would look at like SGPs, like go to DraftKings and like think about, okay, what is it worth if Kelsey, like if I parlay all this together, if he has over 100 yards and he has a touchdown and the Chiefs win, and it's a lower scoring game, like what is that worth? And then compare it to the odds in the Super Bowl market. What I would say is that if you are bullish on Travis Kelce, then I think a way to attack it maybe would reasonably be Super Bowl MVP. Because if he does have a big game and it's a low scoring game, like he certainly does have a shot, and 17-1, like that's not terrible. But I would just say like all of the bull cases that you can make on a non-quarterback and how they get the MVP award, maybe just think about ways to leverage that scenario in SGPs.
That's a great point there, Jack. Anything to add?
I think the Swifties factor is actually fairly notable here with the 20% fan vote, because I think that if Kelsey comes out with like, a game that it puts him in contention for MVP, but MVP would normally go to Mahomes in that case, I do think that like a 20% fan vote, which would likely be pretty far in Kelsey's favor, could make that closer to a toss-up. I do agree with Matt that it's not likely, but I think that it is kind of like a unique case where the fan vote actually counts, and we can expect the fan vote in the event of a good Kelsey game to be overwhelmingly Kelsey favored. So I kind of am into 17-1 here. But I might be overestimating the Swifties, but I feel like it's impossible to overestimate them. I feel like I don't know.
Here's a way of thinking about this. Like the receiving yardage prop right now for Kelsey is 70.5. I would not be betting that. Like if I like the over, I would just bet on him in an SGP or bet on him to win Super Bowl MVP, because like if he has over 70.5 receiving yards, there's a decent chance he has over 100 and a touchdown, and at that point I would just rather have exposure on him in the MVP market. So like if I'm thinking about like an upside scenario with a guy like Kelsey, yeah, like I'm going to want to have like a 17-1 or like an SGP type of investment, not just going over 70.5 receiving yards.
Yeah. And I'm sure you can kind of work out an SGP there. I guess the right answer here is to just kind of do your homework, work through the SGP results. And if you don't like the odds that you're getting from there, then, and you like the Kelsey for MVP, then you can take that 17-1 here. There's also another MVP question that I want to bring up here before we get into our best bets to close out the show. Nathan, with kind of a sicko bet, which I'm all over here. Thoughts on Sam Darnold for MVP, 200-1. Obviously, you need a lot of things to go your way here, mainly Purdy getting hurt in the first half. Matt, you're laughing a bit. You want to share your thoughts on this one?
It's just, this is like such a degenerate question, but like, it's, this is the stuff that you think about when
Yeah.
it comes time for the Super Bowl. I love it. I would not be betting that, but like, I'm notoriously like a sort of conservative in the decision making, but no, I mean, I think the odds of like 200 to 1, I think this would need to be more like 500 to 1 or like 1,000 to 1 for me really like to consider it, because like the 49ers have to win. Sam Darnold has to come in early enough in the game for him to be able to accumulate enough yards. It like you just kind of like parlay all of that together, and it is just, I feel like it's not 200 to 1. It's much longer than that.
Yeah, and on top of that, you need like the receivers to not stand out. You need Christian McCaffrey to not stand out. You need people on the defensive side of the ball to not stand out, right? You need Darnold to be the standout guy here. Jack, any thoughts on the 200 to 1? I saw you laughing there a bit too.
Yeah, I was laughing at the degeneracy factor of it, and
I love it.
and
Yeah,
imagining showing up to a Super Bowl and your friend asks you what you bet on, and you tell him Sam Darnold 200 to 1. But I think I probably am not going to bet it, but just trying to think through, that's 1 out of 200, 1 out of 201 actually, I guess. But let's say that there's a 2 to 3% chance that Brock Purdy gets hurt in a game, maybe 2 to 4%. If you assume the injuries are equally distributed, which I don't know if they are, then you need a first half injury from Purdy. So let's say 1 to 2% of a first half injury. That gets you to like 1%, which is 100 to 1. You need the Niners to win. And with Darnold, I think they'd be a dog to the Chiefs. So that already gets you around 200 to 1 or so. And then you need Darnold to also beat out the other 49ers weapons. So I think these are just, if you disagree with my percentage rough estimations on any of that, then you very well could get to a spot where 200 to 1 is a good bet. But just from those random numbers I kind of made up off the top of my head, I think that it would be a little bit longer than 200 to 1.
Yeah, that's a great way to...
I think it's a lot longer than 200 to 1. And I actually don't think that your numbers are all that wrong. Like 2 to 4%, like that is the probability of a quarterback getting injured at any point in a game. So like that is fine. And thinking about, how it's probably evenly distributed, I think that's right. Like, there's maybe a 1% chance that Brock Purdy gets injured in the first quarter or first half of the game. And then, at that point, the 49ers are significant dogs. Not just because there's probably a downgrade from Purdy to Darnold, but Darnold hasn't practiced as the starter for this game. So a lot of the game plan would probably need to change. And to Jason's point, it's not just at that point the 49ers need to win. The 49ers need to win, and Sam Darnold needs to be the reason they won. You put all that together, and it's like, no, it needs to be longer than 200 to 1.
Yeah, I like the thought process here, and I don't want to we're not scoffing at you, Nathan. We appreciate you, Nathan. You're like an OG chatter in the chat. We love him over here at Forward Progress. It's just working through it.
Right. No, this is great. Like, I love having to think about, you should be asking yourself questions like this, because if it's not Sam Darnold, it's someone there are opportunities in all of the Super Bowl markets. So you have to think about the scenarios. And I would say maybe the scenario of bet the SGP, there's no market for Sam Darnold. So if you like Darnold, this would be the market for betting. But you do want to think about where the markets for all the Super Bowls might be exploitable. So I do like thinking about this. And I will say it also depends on your risk tolerance and your type of degeneracy. If you have this thought on Sam Darnold at 200 to 1 and you don't bet it, and it somehow happens, are you the kind of person who can live with yourself? You know what I mean? So some people couldn't. They would absolutely hate themselves for the next year. And so I'll just say know yourself as a bettor and what it is that you can and can't tolerate. And then if it's look, if this doesn't hit, or if it does hit and I'm not on it, I'm going to hate myself, fine, put $5 on it, or whatever it is. But know yourself as a bettor.
Yeah, that's a good point there. And Zachary Jameson in the chat saying Nick Bolton 620. I think that's more of so a joke as well here. I'm just wondering what Blaine Gabbert is to win MVP here. So anyways, let's move on to our best bets to close out the show here. Then we have 2 more props in the chat that we'll get to right after our bets. Matt, we'll start with you to close out the show. Give us one of your best bets for the Super Bowl.
Okay, so this bet that I want to highlight, I will just say up front, like, apologies, it is not available at all sports books, and so it's at DraftKings, but it's not even available at every state where DraftKings is. So apologies for that, but I want to highlight it because I feel like it's the type of bet that shows the expansiveness of the prop menu that we have for the Super Bowl. And that bet is Patrick Mahomes under 21.5 DraftKings points. And I'll just say, like, I am super partial to fantasy points, like fantasy point props in general. There was one book a number of years ago that posted them, had no idea what they were doing. I bet that as hard as I could for as long as I could before I was backed off and they stopped posting them. But like, that was the foundation of my bankroll, was like exploiting that opportunity. So anytime I see fantasy points in a prop, absolutely love it. For Mahomes, if you look at what he's done this year, the regular season, 16 games, went over 21.5 DraftKings points, and just 3 of those, his highest in the playoffs has been 18.6. I have this projected at 18.6. And then I'll say the matchup is tough going against the 49ers, number 5 in defensive drawback EPA. The last time Mahomes went over this number was week 7. Like, that was a long ass time ago, like week 7. And that was against the Chargers, you know, like, who gave it up to everybody. Like, the 49ers are not the Chargers. They have allowed in just 18 real games this year. So not counting week 18 when they weren't playing for anything, but in their like representative 18 games this year, they allowed quarterbacks to go over 21.5 DraftKings points just 5 times. So like, from the Mahomes perspective, I think this number is unrealistic. From the 49ers perspective, I think this number is unrealistic. Like, I know this isn't widely available, but like, this is an example of the type of opportunity that is out there just because it's the Super Bowl and because props are posted on basically everything in the books. They just have no idea how to price a lot of this stuff accurately.
Yeah. All right. I love that. It was Patrick Mahomes under 21.5 fantasy points over. You can find that on DraftKings. Jack, let's go with your best bet here. You have like kind of 2 best bets, but one, let's give out the one that's like more widely available. Then you can mention the other one as well here. So take it away.
Yeah. I don't think either of these are super widely available. But you know, Mahomes fantasy points, we're gonna get even more degenerate here, I guess, and we're gonna go with Kyle Juszczyk under 1.5 targets. And then there's also some under 2.5 PPR fantasy points out there that you'll have to dig a little bit for, because it's definitely not widely available. But last week, Juszczyk had 3 targets, 2 receptions, 33 yards. He ran a route on 47% of dropbacks, which tied his second highest mark of the season. That was obviously the conference championship, so maybe you could think like there's some signal in it's getting deep in the playoffs, they want to use them, but they played an equally tight game script. I guess it was different game script against Green Bay, but it was a tight game throughout, which I think should be the expectation here. And Juszczyk only ran around on 27% of dropbacks, which was below his season average. On the season, he's at 0.09 targets per route run, which is pretty awful. And he's only gotten 2+ targets in 5 of 17 regular season games, and then obviously 1 of 2 playoff games. So just game log watching, it is in our favor. The story on fantasy points is similar. I'm kind of just using the fantasy points bet as a way to like get more down on Juszczyk fades. But yeah, Kyle Juszczyk unders.
I'm just curious your thoughts here, just quickly. His reception total is at a half, obviously, if his targets are at 1.5. Best price I can find is plus 125, and his receiving yards are 3.5. Best price I found is a minus 110 here. Any thoughts on those? I know you'd probably rather go with the other ones, but do you like, let's say you're not available to get, you don't have those outs that are available that you mentioned there. Would you be still interested in those?
Yeah, I think I like the under half reception better than the yards. He only has 1 catch under 3.5 yards all year. So if he gets a catch, it's probably 4 more yards. So at that point, I'd much rather take the plus 125 rather than the minus 110, minus 115, or whatever you can get on the 3.5 yards. But yeah, I don't mind that either.
All right, sounds good. And Frederick is asking if there's any way for such props to bet these props as a European. DM Jack, DM Matt Freeman on Twitter. You can ask them directly because honestly, I cannot tell you. I have no idea. You got to let us know what your available outs are, and maybe we can help you down the road here. But I know both these guys have their DMs open, so please or DM me if you want to. But yeah, feel free to DM us on Twitter at any time. Sorry guys for putting you on the spot. You can DM me on Twitter. Maybe I shouldn't say you guys, but anyways, there's two more props that are mentioned in the chat here. I just want to get your guys' quick thoughts before we sign off. Justin Watts, he's asking us he likes MVS and Kittle for their longest reception. He's taking them on the over, and MVS is at 13.5 minus 110 is what I found for the over there for MVS, and then Kittle is 20.5 minus 112 for the over 20.5 for his best price. Jack, you're the longest reception guy here. It's your like stake your claim on it. So tell us a little bit about those. Do you like those? You don't like those? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can look up exactly what we have for our longest reception. We have Kittle like basically right at that line. We have projection wise 20 as what we're projecting for his longest reception. So I think given the juice, that would probably be a no bet. For MVS, we actually it's similar. We have 12, which actually would be under. I do think that, I mean, last week he led the Chiefs in routes, which is pretty incredible. So just given the increased usage in the playoffs, I think that that's slightly interesting. But he's just been such a poor target earner the entire season. It's hard for me to tell, like, are these playoff performances signal or is it just kind of like noisy target earning that we haven't seen the whole year? So yeah, I probably won't bet either of those, to be honest, but I do get the logic.
Yeah. All right. I think we talked about that on the Wednesday show as well. Matt, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Justin mentioned after that another comment in here. If you're feeling degenerate, MVS under 1.5 receptions, over 24.5 receiving yards at 11-1. Like that's interesting. And this is something that I don't know if anyone's read the book Interception by the guys who wrote Logic of Sports Betting. I think it's a pretty sharp book. And one of the things that they mentioned was that a lot of books can be exploitable in their SGPs based on how they correlate stuff with especially like particular type of players. And MVS would be one of those guys where most books would say there's correlation, with a guy having more receptions and more yards. But with someone like MVS, who only needs like one reception to get like 40 yards or something like that, just kind of depending like on how things unfold, like there could be significant value there. So like, yeah, I actually kind of like that one of like, if you are bullish on MVS, there's still a scenario where he has over 24.5 receiving yards, but only one reception. So that might be an interesting way of attacking it.
Yeah, and Frederick, it seems like I got to move to Europe because he's saying that over 18.5 and the under 1.5 receptions is 11-1 there. So he's getting like, what is it, 6-7 yards there and getting the same price. So yeah, that's a great point. Always shop around here. And then finally, Arthur's asking if MVS longest reception in the game, 14-1. I think I would just probably go with the that SGP there. I don't know what you guys would say, but that'd just be me. Matt, any thoughts?
I'm going to kick it to Jack first while I think about it a little bit, since he's the longest reception guy.
Jack, any thoughts?
We actually at some point this week will have that market priced out. I don't think we have it yet. I'm a little scared to fade. I feel like one of the San Francisco guys has got to be pretty likely, or Kelsey or Rice, just given like, MVS is probably going to have 3 targets. I feel like 14-1, I might want even better odds than that, but that is purely like off the cuff. And later in the week, I do think that at ETR, we plan on modeling that out. So if you DM me, I could give you a better answer in a few days.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Go follow Jack Miller02 on Twitter. That's at Jack Miller02 on Twitter. And also go follow ETR if you're not doing that. What are you doing? Matt, if you want to give your thoughts here before we close it out.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like the most he probably gets is 4 targets in the game, and maybe like 2.5, 3. That's more realistic. I probably want longer than 14-1 if he's going, even though he's running so many routes. if he's still, running a number of those routes, when he's being ignored, they kind of don't matter so much. And I'd probably want longer than 14-1.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, guys. Appreciate all your questions in the comment section here. Going to close out the show right now, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in throughout the year on Forward Progress here for our props show. We've loved the chat interaction. It's been great today. If you're interested in looking for more props, we have a giant Super Bowl prop extravaganza going live at noon Eastern. Both Matt and Jack will be there, as well as John, as well as 27 other guests. We're going to have over 30 guests on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. A 5-hour long live stream at noon Eastern on Wednesday. So Wednesday before the Super Bowl at noon Eastern. If you're working, try and take the day off if you're looking to bet these props, because they most likely, some of them will be moving in real time here. So if you suddenly catch a cold on Tuesday night, make sure you tell your boss that you need the rest of the day off on Wednesday. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. This is the last show for us here on the Friday Prop Show for this season. It's a little bittersweet for me. I had a lot of fun doing it with you guys. So Matt, thank you. Jack, thank you. And then John as well. Thank you to all three of you guys for sticking through the entire year with us here on Forward Progress. And obviously, thank you to the listener as well. We wouldn't be doing this if you guys weren't here. Last thing I want to say is just also Super Bowl. It's a big event. You're going to be probably surrounded by family and friends. Always bet within your means and play responsibly, as well as drink responsibly, guys. Make sure you have a safe ride home. And yeah, just be safe for these large events here. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We really appreciate it. Before you head out, if you can hit that like button, we'd be great for us here in the algorithm. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button as well. Like I said, we got a little bit more content coming your way for the Super Bowl. So for myself, for Matt, for Jack, this has been Forward Progress, powered by Pinnacle on the Hammer Betting Network. Guys, good luck on your Super Bowl bet.